Good day, it's Arno Klaasen again here from LifeWise, and all these recordings and all our books are for free on the webpage called lifewise.co.za. Today we go on with another session on my gospel story, and now we are at session 6 and we call it the challenge. And this is a challenge that's sort of started to come forward in my life from the year 31 to 35. If I can just look at my life, I can just say, we really lived a good life, but we really lived an intense, challenging life, to be quite honest. When I look at all these things, what happened in every 5 years, it was as if when I think back to that, I think to myself, how did I ever survive all these things, And it is so integrated, and it's all happening sort of at once, and it's coming to you, and it's inside of you, it's around you. But I really can say we lived a good life until now, but it was a really an intense life with full of challenges, and the biggest challenges was now coming. The rest was a challenge in the sense that we had to find myself, but now we're on the move outward, now we're building our lives and all the challenges. And in starting to build a career, in the ministry and whatever you may call it, we start to experience a lot of Afrikaans noem het weerstand, a lot of things that's coming against you, that's not working always out as you planned it to be. So as I told you the last time, the last 5 years was basically was my first ministry years, and then was the first, my army years. And that basically constituted, and in that process was, that we have sort of started a house church group, we ministered, and then we found out it was part of other church, so we took them back there, we solved the church split, and so we had lots of experience there, and then it's the army thing, and while we were students, me and my wife, on Stellenbosch, that's now even more than 5 years back, on Stellenbosch, when we left the Dutch Reformed Church, we helped planting a renewal church on Stellenbosch. We were very much involved there. It was very nice and all these things, but then we moved to the Strand, as I've told you. But while we were already in the army, we had contact with these people, and we visited them, and the leaders of that church ask us to come back to Stellenbosch, ask us to be part of that church in the official sense as the staff, and all these official structures and things and so forth. And so we said yes, because we know so many people already there, so we moved there. We translocated, we moved there. But something strange happened, it was already announced in the church there, it was in a Sunday service, it was said to the people and everything, and when we arrived there and we started to attend the services, it was as if no one knows anything about us, no one knows anything about anything that was said, and it just disappeared. And the reason afterwards that I found out, it was not really a good reason, but I mean that's the thing that started to happen. Now you must realize, I had my bad experience in the Dutch Reform. I had this church thing, and we have the internal challenges ourselves, and we had to face this church split thing and help it, and now I'm in another church, and it's a repeating another thing of this church thing. And it is as if this church disappointment built up in me, I just cannot understand. I started to get a feeling that this church thing was creating more problems than it was ever solving problems. But I couldn't understand it. I was not negative, I was not against it or anything, but I just started to realize there's not only maybe a problem around here, there's maybe a big problem around here, and there's maybe a foundational problem around here. But I do not know where it is, how to solve it, and so we just went on, we rented a house there in the Boord, in Stellenbosch. It is a place there, one of the suburbs. Someone that heard about us going to Stellenbosch, didn't even know us actually, phoned us, and said, we heard you going there. He sponsored us for a house for 6 months because it was a house that was finished building but not yet sold. Basic 3-bedroom house. And so we were there, and the house was sold after 6 months. But in there we started to minister to people. They come, they stay, they visit, we eat together, we do make food together, we preach together, we fellowship together, Later on, at a certain stage, we had 30 people there with us in that home. It was very nice, but it was very cramped. So I looked for an answer, and then the Lord opened up a door for us for a house in Die Laan, this place, the address in Stellenbosch along the Eerste Rivier there. So we went there. This was a 14 room house. It's sort of a complex, little complex of its own, Very nice place. And we had a plan there, accommodating students and, giving meals there and all things. But we had to go through the municipality. And later on, we heard that someone there saw the potential of the place, and he just opposed all our plans, and he bought the place under us out, and he basically stole the place because we tried to buy the place also and all these things. It was a beautiful place, but it didn't happen at the end of the day. The owners was very difficult people, and that was a difficult process. And then we had this guy in the municipality, and it all ended up in a mess. And I remember that the 31st of December, we had to move the next day. It was the first time in our life when we had to move the next day. We do not have a place to stay. But I didn't went into a negative situation of, the Lord doesn't provide, because remember, we're living in faith. That was our concept at that stage. We will come later to, is it right or wrong, or how does it work? But we lived in faith, and our perception was you had to decide between ministry and business. So we decided to go for the ministry thing. There's no church behind us, so we had to trust the Lord. And the Lord always provided for us. Let me tell you, always. But we never made any financial progress. That didn't bother us because we were just happy with what is enough. And so we went on. And where was my story? Okay, we had to move the next day. And that night there was a phone call. And that's one thing that happened, if I can just mainly explain it, that the Lord gave us some favor with the unbelievers and the people having cafes and supermarkets, business people. Because we got to know some of them just buying there, get to know them, and they trust you, and when they go on holiday, they ask you to look after their place, and it is, we did excellent work, and they were so happy, and they told everyone in Stellenbosch, and then they asked us, and, so constantly when people went on holiday or something overseas, we're in the supermarket and big places and big businesses, and with no background of business, I sorted out a business, putting systems in place and all things, and that provided a little bit of money for us also at the end of the day. So where was I now? So that's right. So I had to move, and one night, that 31st of December, one of the cafes phoned me and said if I can do them a favor, just pick up something there at another cafe. It's late night, it was about 10 o'clock, and they can't move, there's not people there. And so I went there to another supermarket to fetch stuff, and when I walked out of the supermarket, the name came to me, Emma's House. That was the old convent, a place full of drug addicts, and it's really an ugly place. Drug addicts and like breaking down the place. It's benders, and all these things. So I went back to the owner and said, "But do you know this place?" He said, "Yes, I'm one of the co-owners of this place." I said, "Oh, I know what's going on there." No, this horrific stories, I said, "But will you not give this place to me so that I can manage it for you?" He was sort of, "Oh my goodness, where are you falling out?" He said, "But let me talk to the other guy." Come back the next morning. He talked to the guy next morning. He said, "Fine, you can go there." And so we moved over there. We stayed in one of the halls there, actually. It's a long story, and we had beautiful stories around about this convent phase, or this convent phase of staying in our lives. Very, very, very beautiful stories. So I had to break in all the rooms, but the students weren't there. Remember, it's the beginning of January. I painted the whole 60-room place out. It's a double story, 60 rooms, sorted out the place, the garden and everything, and I advertised in the paper for Christians to come and stay there, and the people phone you and say, my goodness, are you crazy? No one can stay in that place. It is a mess. It is just all these drug addicts and this. I said, no, I've sorted it out. You come and stay here. So people book there. We got a lot of Christians who stay there, nice people, but the guy that unofficially had the place under his authority was a big guy that was a sort of a bender there, and a gangster. And he came back. He stayed actually in the chapel, big room. He grown his all his drugs and stuff there in the room in pots and things. And so I said, no, you can come and stay here, no problem. This is the rent, so much so. No, he's not paying rent. He's actually the chief here. I said, no, you're not the chief. I'm the chief here. So we had conflict, with each other, and his second in charge sort of got to know the Lord, and his sister was in Wyoming. She phoned me and said, please, can you just give this guy a place, help him, look after him. And we helped him, looked after him. He gave his life to the Lord. He saw the Lord at night, and then the Lord appeared to him. Dramatic stories that I can go on hours and tell you. But they tried to get this guy under their control again, and one night they got him out of the place, and they out with the Volkswagen, and 4 of them ended up under the train, killed, but not the leader. But the whole gang just went in splitting pieces, and nothing was left of it. And then this gangster, this leader tried to get into, he makes friends with people, then he sleep there, he comes in late night, you don't know it, and all these things. And one night he was there, and they were making big noise, and I jumped in there, and I just sat in their conversation and said, okay, so what's going on here? And he was very, very uneasy, and he started to speak against me. He said, yeah, but you just want me dead. I said, no man, relax, you're dead already at the cross 2,000 years ago. He said, yeah, but God hates me. I said, no man, God loves you so much that He gave His Son, and every time He gives all this negative stuff, I throw Him with the gospel of grace. Remember, I'm no longer in the gospel of sin, I'm in the gospel of grace and of love and the Father heart of God. And I just throw Him with that stuff. He just couldn't handle it. He just couldn't handle it. Maybe going back to his second in charge, I had a long conversation with him. He gave his life to the Lord. He just couldn't resist the gospel of grace. He was so overwhelmed by it. He accepted it, and 2 weeks later he was under the train dead. Actually, a bigger story than that, but that's the basics of it. So now I was in a room with this guy with all his gang members, and he was trying to show off, and the more he shows off, I throw them with the gospel, the gospel of grace and how God loved them and all these things. He just couldn't handle it. He just freaked out. And because I was not negative, I was not accusing him, I was not jumping on him. And then what happened is that night they broke into a place, and then the police caught them. The next morning in prison he phoned me. He said I must come and visit him. I went there. He says to me, listen, never ever has a Christian talk to me like you. What is the problem? I've never heard the words like that. And I told him the gospel, the right gospel of grace. He gave his heart to the Lord. He went off from 50 Mandrax tablets one day. He sorted it out. He started to minister in the prison. They don't know what to do with him, because he was just preaching to everyone. Everything that's got 2 legs, he was trying to convert. We ended up in the court, and then the magistrate said, no man, we can't put this guy in the prison. He was asking to go to prison. He said, please send me there. Send me long there, because all my friends are there and I need time to work with them. And he said, no, you're not going to work in prison. He's got 5 years, wat hulle noem opgeskorte vonnis, prison sentence that was waiting for him, plus this, and then they said to him to come and stay 2 years with us to minister to people. That was his vonnis, or what you call it in English, at the end of the day. So that's many more stories about this place, but this is a story, that place is a story of its own. But we stayed there, and in that stage, you know, we had beautiful people there that look after the place. We started to do some tours around the country. We go 2 months on the road with all 4 children, coming back and stay 2 months, then 2 months on the road, coming back. We actually did that for 14 years. It actually sort of started before that, but not over the country, just in the area. And then it went all over the country, and we start to meet people. We just stay with them, we just minister to them, stay in their houses, minister to them, you know, about victory and marriage and children and all these normal life things, you know. So that was the thing that it started to happen in our lives, and I can't remember the precise time we were there. Remember, we're talking about my years 31 to 35. We were quite a few years there. And then on one of our tours, I realized that something is going to happen. Before the tour started, when 2 o'clock we woke up that morning, I said to my wife, something is going to happen. Something is going to change. And I think we're going to move. You're going to move either to the Strand or either to Pretoria. But I don't think it's Pretoria. If it's Pretoria, it's just because it's the gateway city. Because I've got no direction that the Lord wants us there. And we know all the people in the Strand, and many people. Maybe we must go back into a more formal church situation there. We all already know the people. Long story. In the situation, but we never told anyone about it. So we went on the tour, and when we came into Pretoria, people tell us, listen, when are you coming to Pretoria? When are you moving here? I say, but why do you think so? We're not moving here. We're moving nowhere at this stage. The Lord haven't told us anything. So we actually came home, and we slept that first night, and the next morning I wake up and I read the Bible, and the Lord gave me a verse in Jeremiah. It says, set up your landmarks, set up your landmarks. How long will you wander around? Turn back to the highway, turn back to the way you just came, turn back to these your cities, because the woman will encompass the man, the bride will grip onto the bridegroom. I couldn't believe it. It was like just written for me there. That morning I found the transport people, and we get an arrangement, but there was only one thing that still need to be finished. We don't know where to stay there, we're just moving. We just spoke to people in Pretoria and said, look out for us maybe for a place, you know. So we found this one guy, he was coming from Pretoria to have some guitar classes for the students that's in the convent there. And I told him, and I said, but listen, don't worry, you just come, and we will then be away, but you just come here, and everything will be organized. He said, but the Lord told him to come to Stellenbosch. And he said, but can we not swap places? You come and stay in my place, I come and stay in your place. And so we organized and we made a swap. And he was staying in Hingelaarsvriend, a very nice holiday resort. The guy that's in charge there is a beautiful Christian, actually an attorney that gave his life to the Lord, on fire for the Lord up till today. And so he gave us the place there, and we stayed there. The most beautiful place on the water, 50 meters grass. Then you've got the Roodeplaat Dam. We've got the most beautiful place I've ever stayed. It's like at sea here in Transvaal in Pretoria. You know that scenario with all the ducks walking around there and people and things. So we moved to Pretoria. I know it was actually somewhere in 1994, but that's not so important. So we stayed a whole year there on Hingelaarsvriend, driving about 12 kilometers into city, meeting more and more people, you know, just visiting them in their houses. And if there was one person or 20 or 50 people in the house, we don't matter. We just fellowship, we just minister, we just flowed. It was not organized, it was nothing. It was not church, if you can say it like that. We never constituted anything, we never organized anything, we just ministered. We get very much involved with Woord en Aksie. That is a very, very beautiful ministry that's leading people to the Lord with camps and try them to find freedom. And lots of people came to know the Lord, and we, on our trips in the towns, we meet them again. And the next year, the second year in Pretoria, we bought a house. Was at the end. Now it's the end of the first year we bought the house. That's right. After a year in Pretoria, we bought the house. That was 1995 October. Very small house, and the house opposite of the one we bought. We had once had a cell meeting there, or a tender cell meeting there, and the guy said, "Come with me. We're just going to give the animals water. This guy's on holiday," and he said, "But this house is for sale. These people want to move." And then when I come back, I phoned them, and I had a challenge for the Lord. I said to the Lord, if He can give me a house of which the down payment of the bond is less than renting the house, I will buy the house. Now people say you can't find places like that. Well, I found that place, because you can challenge the Lord. He wants challenges like that. He says to us in Malachi that you must challenge me in the financial stuff. So I challenged Him and He gave it to me. And since then I've challenged the Lord in property, and I want a certain type of property, and He always gave me that certain type of property. Because He loves it. He loves giving it to you and showing you that He will not disappoint you. But the property story is in the next session that we will come to. So here we were in Pretoria. We bought for ourselves a house. We stayed there till a year and a half ago. About 23 years. We still got a house. We're just renting it out at the moment. A very nice house. It started out as a very small house, 80 square meters, 2 bedrooms, and it is now 350, I don't know, square meters, 2 3-bedroom houses. We built on and on and on. As the children came, we just built on and on and on. It's a story on its own. People always said, you just go up 6th Avenue, when you see a piece of sand, a heap of sand, that's the house. Because we were sort of always busy building and busy doing something, busy restoring something. And that was very exciting. So with Woord and Aksie, we actually met a guy that was a farmer in Harrismith, and his name is Donnie de Blanc, stunning guy. He was only a farmer, but he started out a church there. Very successful, very spiritual guy, apostolic, prophetic, and we started to get to know him. We teamed up with a few other people, and we started to plant churches in all of these towns where all of these Woord and Aksie people came home, do not fit in the current church, so we plant new churches all over the country, lots of them. That were initially working very, very well, because there was fire in it, and there was this zeal, to reach out to the world and to lead people to the Lord and all, that thing. But later on, after 5 years and more, we started to experience problems in these churches because of, I said, it implodes, because you started it on an evangelistic basis, but then you go over into a pastoral mode, and then these two things, the one eats up the other one. I remember the day when I drove the night out of Stellenbosch to Pretoria. I remember thinking about this church problem, as I said, that started to rise up in my own heart. And I thought to myself, how can you build a thing that you tell the people it is evangelical and we must reach out, but we built it pastoral inwards on a fellowship basis? We try to keep the people here, but we tell them to go there, and I was just thinking about it. And I said to myself, I've never seen a place, and I've never seen it up till today, to be quite honest, where in a church, the evangelistic and the pastoral coexist. In a church. It coexists I've seen it coexisting in people's lives, but not in a church. Because the one always eats up the other one, because the directions is different. The one direction is inward, the other direction is outward. In the way we built it, it's not that it is biblical so, but the way we built it. The one eats up the other one, either this one, or this one. And I said to myself, either this one must go there, or this one must go here, because I've never seen something else. I was just thinking, just to introduce you to some of my thinking, concerning this church problem that arose more and more and more in my own life. So at this stage, as I said, we're not actually in a church, because we ended up in nothing there in Stellenbosch. But we just decided to sit, not to sit still, but just to minister to students all over, morning, noon and night, And we delighted in it. It was so beautiful, it was so wonderful, except the churches was not very happy with us. Not that we stole any person, not anything that I can think of, but they didn't like it. That the people was coming to us and they were finding help. And again I was thinking, how on earth can they be unhappy about us? We're not against them, but they're against us. We're not stealing anything from them, but they want to proclaim it's their people. And I can't understand, how can you tell me it's your people? You haven't bought them, you haven't did anything to pay for them or anything. How can it be your people? I'm not telling people to go out there or not to visit or nothing. They come to you, they sit to you, they don't share their church stuff, they share their personal lives. You help them, they go back in their normal situation. But why? Why are they so against you when you just for free minister unto people and just give them? Just again an introduction to the world that I was struggling with, because this is the challenge. What must I do? Because I thought in going back to the Strand, and go and build properly so that we can be part of this process, and I can also be a church, then people can settle down and they not be so, I've got all these issues with me. But now eventually we ended up, as we said, in Pretoria, and under the influence of Dani, he started a church because he said this is the answer. He said the answer is, and we hear it always, the answer to the world is the church of God. It sounds beautiful, it sounds good, it is in essence true, but it all depends what do you mean by church, because I haven't seen it happen yet up till now, because the definition of church is wrong, and we'll get to that later on. And this thing started to bother me, but at the end of the day I said, okay, maybe this brother of mine is right. So we started up a church. You called it his family, say family. We were about 80 to 120 people constantly, because about 79% of all churches worldwide has got a membership of about 80 to 120 people, because that's what one couple, pastoral couple or ministry couple can handle. And the interesting thing is to break out of that bracket to the 200 and the 400 is not to become more spiritual, is to establish a decent admin center. You hear me? That's what they told me, and they're right, they're not wrong. But I could never establish this admin center. That was not my gift. And so I was fighting with this, but we had really a wonderful time with all these people, very much imploding in a big sense of the word, the people, but I was reaching out, but they were not so much reaching out, and we were struggling with all these things and how to get it together. So I was there, but I was always out also in the field, in all these trips, but the church didn't like it, but our hearts were just in more than one place, always planting all over. And it is not good. If you plant a church locally, they want you to be there all the time, every Sunday, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Otherwise, it's not a good thing. Because the way we do it, it is not a good thing. Okay, so we planted these churches, and lots of them eventually at the end of the day, I was part in stirring a lot of them. And it happens to get the name, namely the network. We never decided on the name, it just happened. People call it the network, a network of churches, so it is the network. And so we planted all these churches, but later on, as I said, we also no longer had enough people to plant. We planted with ordinary people. The leaders in these churches was the farmer and the veterinarian and the jewelrist and name it. Normally ordinary people, not with biblical scholar theological studies. And it eventually works very nice, but we get more and more into this imploding thing, if you can say it like that we couldn't solve. At the end of the day, this leader of us convinced us that we must go and join a bigger network that was much more logistical ordered, So we joined them. It was not really in my heart. We joined them, and it was good for 3 years, and then after 3 years it went down again. because this church thing just interfered again more and more and more. This typical church organizational, structural thing with all its problems and all its divisions and all its differences and all its positional and who's leaders and who's not leaders and all these human things becoming more relevant than the gospel and the victory in Christ Jesus. Again, the same thing all over and all over again. So, but one thing I just want to mention is that, when we started out with his family church, it was about 2 years, it was running well, and well in the good sense of the word, not always biblical, but well, it was peaceful, we were really enjoying, it was nice, and we did things, we had outreaches, and then my leader came to me and he said to me, but there's another church in Pretoria that he knows very well, and we must come together, and we actually knew them. Not so good, but we knew them, nice people, decent people, and we said, no, coming out of a background, we're dealing with church splits and stuff, no problem, my brother, just bring them. They brought them, and I tell you, it was one night there from the beginning to the end. They stayed there, I think, about 2 years, and exactly the same people that came in left after 2 years. And then this thing puzzled me even more. Because when we fellowship and braai with these people, it was so beautiful and so nice and no problem. But the moment we got into a church meeting, problems, never-ending problems. I couldn't understand why is this church framework just producing problems, and it just never ends. While I know we've got good intentions in our heart, they've got good intentions, but we cannot function together in this structure. It is just impossible to function, as if the structure is producing a complexity that's incredible, complex. That is not there when we just normal believers and we fellowship together and we just share our hearts, visit each other at home, no problem. But the moment we're in the structure, we got lots of problems. So they actually moved away, and actually they died. They closed the church after I think 6 months, because there was some stuff that was wrong. I think they weren't willing to change. Okay. And we were sort of going on well, but we were not blossoming and exploding or something. And I was again asking all these questions. So then 3 things happened in my life, and I thought to myself, I just thought to myself the answer, as I thought to myself, and maybe the Lord leading me there, that maybe we must study this thing of discipleship, because it's very prominent in the Bible. Everyone is saying they're doing discipleship, and I believed I was also doing it. But what is this thing of discipleship? Maybe there's a key and a secret in this thing. And then I had 3 experiences concerning this discipleship thing that is very important in my life. The first one is that to experiment with this thing, I took one of the houses that we bought, and we opened up sort of a discipleship school that ran for 5 years basically. Open up a discipleship school, we bring in young people, like a gap year type of thing, and we're going to disciple them and see if we can put them much more in the word, and much more in the outreach, and much more in this, and we taught them everything, plumbing, electricity, name it, whatever you could think of, we taught them. If we could disciple them in a whole areas, it will help more to bring forth better disciples. And it was not that I was absolutely convinced about the thing we were doing. I was just convinced about the concept, and that was my best way I could think of how to activate this concept. So we activated the concept. We had this house with about 15 people or something like that, and it was actually a sort of a nightmare. I learned a lot of stuff there, but actually it was one of the biggest disasters I've ever started up in my life. Good things also came out of it that I will talk to you in the next phase or the next session. But there was good things, but one of the big reasons why things didn't work out is that half of the people who received there were drug people. People who just sending the unsuccessful fallout children to us, that were in drugs, and we were so too willing to accept them, and we thought, between them and the other half, we will sort it out. But the drug people are deeply in problem. You know, they've got no fatherhood relationship. They've got no discipline in their lives, and they are extremely selfish. You know, they believe they will just get over everything. There's no consequences in life. So you can teach them. They are just busy thinking about the next thing, and you know, they will always get over it. They always think they will get away with everything. So I'm really concerned about the drug thing in our country, and maybe I think the people that's doing the best with this is people there in Oudtshoorn. I've got very good appreciation for them, because they're addressing this stuff very good. But then you need to sort of gear yourself for this type of problem. We never geared for this type of problem. We thought it will just vanish, but drug stuff just doesn't vanish along the way. You just need to deal with that type of people. You bring only that type of people, and you need to deal it, especially on this basis of the fatherhood and the discipline and the selfishness and all these things. But that's a session on its own. Okay, so we had this thing, and out of this thing we realized, listen, this concept of mine is not working. I don't know why. There's certain reasons I could think, but overall we're producing actually less discipled people than actually that we had in the congregation on Sundays. And it was really a bit of a disappointment, but I think in the middle of this whole thing, I got to know, and that was the second thing of discipleship, I got to know, one of my friends phoned me one day. He said, listen, he's a guy here from overseas, his name is David Watson. You will find it very difficult to find anything of him on the internet, but you can read a lot about him in my congregation wise.co.za under discipleship. I've got his whole story there, his teachings and what he's believing. And I was visiting this guy, you know, I was just curious about the discipleship thing. I've heard about this guy. I've heard he's this enormous successful church planter. So he planted churches like the typical church that we think of, and then he went to India and it failed all the way. And the Lord told him how to go back and start a discipleship movement, not planting churches, because church planting was never given to us as a command in the Bible, number one. But starting up a movement of discipleship and to start up groups with only 4 things in the groups that's happening. You can read it there. And he started up this, and it ended up and maybe the most successful movement, one of these most successful movements that we ever had. About half of the missionaries in the world at the moment is following it. It totally invaded the Muslim world. It invaded the third world. It is battling in the Western world because of certain reasons. If you read it, you will see why. But I was absolutely mind-boggling impressed with this guy. Not only with his teachings, but with the person, the attitude. He was just one person of walking love, you know. He was not a pie in the sky. He was not a positional. He was not, you know, he was this general in the spirit, but so down to earth as you could never think of. Really, I was so impressed. So I would really say to you, if you really think about discipleship, you can go back there and you can read it there. Then just quickly after that, 2 years after that, you know, we actually came in contact with a church in Pretoria that it's well known for discipleship, and we actually knew some of the people long beforehand, but never seen them again. So we visited there, and I realized, you know, I'm not the typical church senior pastor, so let's just take everything there. Let's just take a gap. Let's just settle down. And I said, Lord, I'm just going to take a year and just sit down here, not doing nothing, but in the church doing nothing. Just sit there. They don't know to meet me, and I preferred it that way. I don't want to preach to anyone here, because I was at that stage actually not used to preaching on Sundays, because Sundays was for me not the main thing. It was visiting people, sit with people, sort out these things. And I said, let's get a break from this Sunday thing for me to handle it and have the responsibility. So we went there. It was very beautiful. It was very nice. We had very beautiful relationships, and then one Sunday they realized there's not a preacher, so they asked me to preach, and And somehow it blessed them in such a manner that maybe a month later I was in the staff and all these things. I was actually not happy with this fast happening. But I thought to myself, let's give it a go, let's just flow. Let's just flow and flow because we believe in the flow. And so we flowed and flowed and flowed and this thing grew and, more churches and things. And I must say, I've learned the most beautiful things there. It's the best church I ever was in up till today. But we grew ourselves back into the church paradigm. We grew ourselves back into the church paradigm with all this stuff that I'm not going to go into now. And then this disappointment. It's not a disappointment in people. It's not a disappointment, in terms of it's a negativity. It's a disappointment that this thing is not changing the world. It is not changing the town. When you're honest with yourself, you say to yourself, listen, we are just more competition. We're just moving people from one place to the other. Yes, there's something more beautiful here, but it is just a little bit more beautiful than there. But behind the scenes, it's actually money, positions, all these things. And we don't know each other, We don't get into each other's houses. We don't know each other's lives, It is again church. And I actually came to that point where I asked myself the question, it sounds, and you must hear me now. I said, maybe I must stop asking the question, what's wrong there? What's wrong there? What's wrong there? Isn't it wrong here? Isn't it wrong here? Am I not totally thinking completely wrong about the whole thing? Are my expectations not maybe wrong? I'm living in this challenge, but the challenge never ends. It's as if this thing never, you go on, we survive, but life in abundance is only in my personal life. I don't see it out here in this thing called the church. What is going on? I remember I've always said I was always the guy that was brave enough to be honest enough. And that saved me all my years. To be brave enough, to be honest enough, and put a thing on the table that is the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. But that elephant in the room got me out of the room always at the end of the day. But I want to sort the elephant because I can't overlook this elephant in the room. I can't just overlook it, but the moment you put the elephant on the table, you are out of the room and the elephant stays behind. That was always like in my life. It's not my decision. It was never my decision to be... I just want to sort out the elephant, but it's as if no one sees the elephant. No one wants to see the elephant. No one wants to talk about the elephant. They go there and say, yes, we know about it, but don't worry about it. We don't go there. And at the end of the day, I realized that maybe I must just get to a new perspective myself and stop worrying about this and this and this and on the outside and just get to a new place in myself where I allow the Lord to give me a new perspective. Maybe reprogram me, because that was what's happening in the next phase. Is that you will not believe what happened in the next phase. You will be in a certain sense very disappointed when you hear what happened in the next phase, because the total unspiritual happened in the next phase. But I had to go and went through this unspiritual phase to get reprogrammed, to get to the place and see where's the problem in myself. Because the problem was here, the problem was not out there, the problem was in me. And the process to get me reprogrammed was so enormously difficult for the Lord, but yet I was, I believe, brave enough to be honest enough, to be willing enough to go through it. And I really believe the Lord has honored me for that. That I can sit today and I can have my answers and I can smile today about it. We will come to it. But it's not maybe the answer. I've never attended a big conference of any apostolic prophetic people. I had to get away from these people because I realized I get sort of in a cocoon of a type of preaching and words and phrases, that got me blinded to the answer. And I had to get out of it. Not that this is evil, but this is This is built in a way that we want it to be, but it is not how the Lord wants it to be. But we don't want to talk about this elephant because our money, our salary is on the table. And then again, for so many times in my life, I had to walk away from my salaries, going back to nothing, having nothing, and say, Lord, I'm back again. I think that was the third, or maybe the fourth time in my life. At the age of 35, I had to walk away from everything, having nothing. Yes, enough from the Lord. And say, Lord, now you must really do something that's drastic enough to get to the core in me of this problem, of what is going on here. Maybe I can just say, that's what's going to, everything is around the wine and the wineskin. The wine is what is the gospel, the wineskin is what is church all about. And these two must come together, and if they don't come together, we will not see world evangelization, because these two together will bring world evangelization. Thank you very much.